Welcome to the Believeland Prep Buckeye Breakdown. I'm your co-host, Cameron Palmer. With me, as always, is my co-host, Derek Dimmitt, and our special guest, Alek Koberna, our Ohio State beat reporter, if you could give him a title. How are you guys doing so far?
Well, Buckeyes are undefeated, so I'm doing fantastic. Makes my job a lot easier when the team I get to cover every week is undefeated.
Yeah,
that helps. Probably feels good for Derek too, covering Mount Union.
Yeah, yep. Don't get to see many games that are in doubt. So, but yep.
Ohio State picked up a kind of a key win, kind of a signature win, I think, for Kyle McCord, along with the Notre Dame game over a ranked opponent, beating Penn State. What was the final? 20-12, I believe.
Yeah,
20 to 12. Yeah, I mean, what a huge win that was for Kyle McCord. 286 wins, and here's the one thing I get when I watch Kyle McCord play. When you see a college quarterback, especially young, a lot of times they will just go through a game. They take their bumps. It is what it is. They don't do anything special. I mean, I think you kind of saw that. You see that all the time when you put in a first-year quarterback. They're game managers. And for the most part, 90% of a game, Kyle McCord is just that. But that 10%, that fourth quarter, those final 5 minutes of a ball game, Kyle McCord turns into the best quarterback Ohio State has ever seen for no reason. The dude is night and day when it comes to first quarter versus fourth quarter. And I love the way he's pretty much, if Ryan Day was still a quarterback, because we all know Ryan Day sometimes first half of a football game, a little slow to start, but then second half he makes those halftime adjustments, boom, best Buckeyes you see. That's Kyle McCord as a quarterback. He's fitting right into this.
So I guess, would you prefer McCord play lights out all four quarters, especially now that we're kind of coming up on some bigger competition? Obviously, the team up north is not that far away on the schedule. Or would you prefer, like, let's let him just shine when the lights are brightest in the fourth quarter?
Here's the thing any coach will ever tell you. You have to roll with what you have. You know, you can't just go out here and say, I would rather this guy do that, because he's not doing that. You have to take what you have and use what you have. So right now, he's playing great in the fourth quarter. We're winning games in the fourth quarter. To me, as a Buckeye fan, as part-time analyst, whatever I do, wherever I go, you have to take the team for what it is. And right now, Ohio State is a team that finds a way. And when you have a quarterback that can help you get there and find that way when it's needed the most, that's what every coach dreams of. I mean, you saw it Sunday with the Cleveland Browns. Controversy is what it is, but you take an XFL quarterback who struggled the entire game, hasn't really had any great stats. He's 33rd in QB rating in the NFL, so no, he hasn't been good. But that fourth quarter, 2 minutes, back-to-back weeks, he gets the team down the field and into the end zone to win a football game. And at the end of the day, scores are what they are. The only thing that matters is what goes down in the standings at the end of the day. Do you get the win or not? Style points are what they are. Style points don't matter for Ohio State. They never have. You go undefeated, you're in the playoffs, or you're in a championship game. That's what it is. All that matters for Ohio State is winning the football game. Kyle McCord does that. And to me, throw stats out the window. Ohio State is not a stat-chasing team. They never have been. That's why we haven't had a Heisman Trophy winner since Troy Smith in the mid-2000s. Ohio State does not care about the stats. Championships are what matter. And at the moment, Kyle McCord's undefeated as a starter. And I think that is the most important thing when it comes to quarterback play.
And stepping away from the quarterback play, all season long, the running back position has kind of been in flux with injuries. Do you see it getting better, or is this kind of what the 2023 version of the Ohio State Buckeyes is going to be for the rest of the year?
Well, obviously, the guy we want the ball, who we want taking this ball is TreVeyon Henderson. I think there's no doubt that when he is healthy, he is a top 5 running back in the nation. I don't think that is a question. When he is 100% healthy, you saw it at the beginning of the season, this guy was just fantastic. Now we've had to go a couple weeks without him. This running back room, like we saw last year, it is a rotation. Luckily for Ohio State, it's the best rotation in the nation. Not many teams can say they can go 5 deep at running back. That is a testament to the way this team has recruited, how they've used the transfer portal with Chip Trayanum to bring back Akron zone. Chip drained him. He went to Hoban, went out there to the West, came back here, and he's tearing things up. The way they've recruited young guys, Dallin Hayden having to step in, Xavier Johnson playing a multi-threat receiver running back duo like we used to see with Jalen Marshall and Curtis Samuel, the way they were used. That's how Xavier Johnson used. And by the way, that position I think is key for Ohio State's success. You saw the way Ohio State won games with Jalen Marshall and Curtis Samuel. They've almost lost that X factor out there. Xavier Johnson's bringing that back to them. So I love the way they've been using them. And then even if we need to go down to Evan Pryor, we still got TC Caffey just sitting back there. I mean, we've gone 4 or 5 deep and we still have more to go. So this running back room is just kind of be at this point running back by committee until one of them takes off in a game, and then that spot's his for the game, and then it just keeps going. I mean, look at the NFL again. I'll pull back here. Go to the Miami Dolphins. They have 2 running backs that are having historic seasons. Whoever is getting the hot hand, they're letting them take that drive. That's what Ohio State's doing, and so far, it's kind of worked. You see it work one drive, you see it don't work the next. I think they're still trying to figure out how it works, but this is what we're going to see from Ohio State in 2023 unless Henderson can get back healthy. If Henderson's healthy, he's going to take this team and he'll lead the running back room. Until then, by committee it goes.
Well, you touched on the running back room. How about Marvin Harrison Jr.? He is what we all expected for him to be this season. I mean, he had a stellar performance against Penn State, and then just to kind of follow up with that, JT Tuimoloau plays his best football against Penn State again. Didn't do much, but then this big sack in the fourth quarter was key once again. Just kind of some thoughts on that.
And how about that with JTT? Guy, I put this out on my own Instagram story after the game that JTT versus Penn State is the best defensive player in college football. Tuimoloau versus anybody else is complete average, and I don't think that is a bad estimation of what he is. For whatever reason, when those lights shine bright, he is there. If they can get that consistency out of him in the other 11 games of the regular season, this guy would have been in the Heisman conversation like Chase Young was a couple years ago. But he doesn't, and he hasn't been that guy. But he did have a great game, and you do have to give credit where credit is due for having that big of a game. We saw it last year. We saw it this year. He's now the Buckeye sack leader on the season. He's got 4 of the team's 14. Ohio State couldn't sack a sack of potatoes prior to this game. We were one of the worst teams in the nation, and now we have 14 sacks. I mean, it was a physically dominant football game. It was exactly what Ohio State needed, though, I thought. And JTT kind of led that charge. But another name that you haven't heard all season, Jack Sawyer. Jack Sawyer was back there doing exactly what we thought Jack Sawyer could be 2 years ago. And last season, he was in the Jack role in Jim Knowles' defense, which I'm not quite sure how Jim Knowles uses this position, but he did say Jack Sawyer was never comfortable with it. That's why they moved him back purely to defensive end. And I think everyone has noticed he is far more significantly an impact out there on every play, and no one was comfortable in Jim Knowles' defense last year. You're seeing a change. You're seeing a mindset change, a culture change in that defensive locker room, back to what we saw when this team was winning a championship with Urban Meyer, what they were at the end of Urban Meyer in the first year of Ryan Day's career in 2019. Ryan Day's even said that this mentality is back to what it was prior to COVID, and this defense lost a lot of confidence going through COVID the last 2 years in losses to Michigan. This defense has a new mentality, and they're doing something that we haven't seen this team do in a long time, play unselfish football on the defensive side. You know, it's always been about that one guy. Can that one guy make a play? And now you have guys all over the place that are making plays. So it's not just JTT. It's not just Jack Sawyer. It's not just Denzel Burke, who was injured in this game and didn't play, which was a huge loss for our secondary. Yet we still had one of the nation's brightest young stars in Drew Aller to one of the worst completion percentages we've ever seen and the worst third down percentage by a top 25 opponent in college football history. They went 1 for 16 on third down. There has been over 1,100 occurrences of top 25 teams on third down, and never has a team gone, or there's been 1,100 occurrences of a team doing worse than, I think it was 30% on third down, but no one has been quite as bad as Penn State was in that game, due to the fact that Ohio State's defense is playing unselfish football. Everybody knows their role, and their role is to get the job done. And to your point about Marvin Harrison Jr., yeah, this is exactly what we expected out of him. But what's crazy is he has 42 receptions on the year. He's averaging 18.2 yards per reception. That is a outstanding number that you just don't see from a high volume pass catcher, a guy that against Penn State had 50% of our receptions for 50% or more of our yards. To be able to target one guy 42 times in 7 games and a defense not be able to do a darn thing. That is what is so outstanding about Marvin Harrison Jr. Most of the time, when you have a guy who's in double, triple coverage, as Penn State started to do in that game, especially early on, to be able to have a guy that goes into double, triple coverage and have the confidence and the ability to not only get out of that coverage, but to get so open that you can target him to an average of 6 times per game, and to get him as many yards and touchdowns and run after catch as he gets. There's a reason this kid is the best player in college football in the nation, and I think he puts himself into the conversation of maybe the best receivers in college football history if he can continue this up. Now, yes, it's going to be a one-season type wonder for Marvin Harrison this season. Between last year and this year, he's not going to get the stats that are going to put him up there on the upper echelon when you look statistically, but when you look pure ability, this is one of the best college football has ever seen do it.
Well, and I mean, you kind of put a button on how stellar he is as an athlete. How important is it, do you think, for some of those younger guys in that wide receiver room, I guess, to put it the right way, just to have that kind of guy in there? I mean, he's young as well, but he's also, he's a little bit more seasoned than the rest of them. I think maybe Julian Fleming a little bit more than him, if anything.
Yeah, Fleming's the one veteran in this locker room, and I think you do see that at times when the team needs just, hey, we need a spark in the second quarter. We're not getting anywhere. Marvin's getting his catches, but it's not yielding anything. Who's the number 2 guy they're going to? And obviously with Egbuka out this past weekend against Penn State, it did become Julian Fleming, and I think he had some big-time catches. I know his stats aren't always what they are expected to be, and for the recruit that he was coming out of Pennsylvania in high school, I think it's fair to say he hasn't lived up to the hype. I mean, he kind of was what Marvin Harrison Jr. has been. That was supposed to be what Fleming was supposed to be. He never quite lived up to that. But what he is doing is holding down the fort, and you need those kind of guys when you play college football. That no matter what, hey, we need a 3-yard dump out. Are you willing to take that hit by a middle linebacker over the middle and hold on to that football? And it seems like Julian Fleming is the first guy in that locker room to go, I'll do it. I have to find my role somewhere. And if you have a guy that is almost desperate to see the field, desperate to get the job done and to help his team in whatever way you can, coaches dream of that guy who's just willing to go out there and take the hit for the team. So I think that's huge. But when you look at the other guys around Marvin Harrison Jr., and the guy I have to spotlight, he's not in the receiving room necessarily, but Cade Stover. Cade Stover is the secret to success at Ohio State football. You've seen it for years with Ohio State. When they are at their very best, it's because they have a tight end who can just go out there and make plays. You see it at all levels. If you have an elite tight end, you win football games. That's why Georgia has been so successful, because they have the best tight end in college football in Brock Bowers. Hopefully he gets rested up and he's healed just fine, because I don't want any asterisks next to this season if Brock Bowers doesn't get to finish it out and someone else goes and wins the national title and all the Georgia fans get to go, but we didn't have Brock Bowers. I want him back. I want him fully healthy, because I think at the end of the season, his impact on just everything is huge. And Cade Stover does the same thing for Ohio State. With Marvin Harrison getting double teamed, Cade Stover gets open over the middle 30% of plays. And every time Kyle McCord goes, take it. Let Farmer Gronk take this football. That's his nickname, by the way, Farmer Gronk. Because in the offseason, when he doesn't have to train, he's taking care of his family's farm. This man's out here on a tractor working 9 to 5 or 7 to 5. He's Farmer Gronk out there. That is the perfect tight end mentality. You want to know why Iowa sends so many tight ends to the NFL? It's because they got them working in the cornfields 7 days a week. It doesn't matter what you do in a practice facility. If you're a tight end and you're working out in a cornfield, you're going to be NFL. I'm sorry. That's just how it goes. I don't know how Brock Bowers got so good down in Georgia, but these northern tight ends, it's because it's about the cornfields. And Farmer Gronk is he's pushing the edge for that for Ohio State. I mean, 15.9 yards per catch for Cade Stover. It's a tight end. You're not supposed to be getting 16 yards every time you touch a football. That's not how that's supposed to work. And for Emeka Egbuka, a guy who got injured, didn't play against Penn State, that loss was felt. I mean, there were times we couldn't move the ball as efficiently as we wanted to. Egbuka is a key piece to how this team operates, and he was number 2 with Marvin Harrison Jr. whole season until missing last week, and Cade Stover jumped him with a great game against Penn. But we knew that was going to be Harrison and Egbuka. Stover's been a bit of an exciting jump. Fleming has done his job. I know this guy hasn't gotten as many catches as I would have liked, and he's had a couple drops and bad plays here. But for a freshman, Carnell Tate is thriving with Marvin Harrison Jr. and company getting theirs because no one looks at him. When number 17 walks out onto the field, they're like, freshman going out there, what is he going to do? We got to worry about these other cats out here. Don't worry about number 17. Put whoever on him. It's not going to matter. And you see when he gets the ball in his hands, he's making good use of it, because when you look at guys on our team that have more than 5 receptions, Carnell Tate has the second best yards per catch of anyone. Marvin Harrison's number 1 at 18.2. He's got 16.6. This guy is slowly and quietly kind of joining that conversation of what we saw out of Marv last year, what we saw out of guys like Olave, who had his breakout game against Michigan a couple of years ago when he was playing, Jackson Smith-Njigba. You see these rookies just have that game, have that season where they creep up on everything. And next year, this guy is guaranteed our number 1 receiver. He's not going to have any problems. And he's learning that confidence from Marv and Egbuka this season. Watch out. Carnell Tate's going to be the next name coming out of this team. And even though he hasn't seen the field, Brandon Ennis, who has 1 catch for a touchdown and 58 yards in garbage time, he's going to be right there with him. So don't you worry, Buckeye fans. This receiving core is great where it is.
It's got to be. I mean, you mentioned the running back room being one of the deepest. I think that receiving room might be just as deep, if not.
Don't cut out those tight ends either. I know it's only Cade Stover. G. Scott just has 4 receptions. They got a young man down there too, a freshman that potentially could see some action later this season. I think they're redshirting him. That's why we haven't seen him. But he was in a conversation earlier this year to potentially join that tight end group, and there was even conversations of him starting. That obviously hasn't happened with how great we have seen Cade Stover be. But Jelani Thurman, the freshman out of Fairburn, Georgia, he's 6'6", 258 pounds. He's one of the biggest guys on Ohio State's roster that isn't playing on the offensive line. He's actually bigger than Josh Fryer, our senior offensive lineman. Jelani Thurman is the same height and around the same weight as that offensive lineman. So this is a huge man that we have waiting in the depths. So don't worry, Buckeye fans. This roster has plenty of depth to go around for years to come. We're bringing in a top-level quarterback in Aaron Nolan. We got Lincoln Kineholz on the roster as well this year. This team is going to be just fine moving forward. Even if injuries hit them this season, they already have the young depth established.
That's key. Derek, I'll let you ask the next question.
Yeah. So, do we have to worry about a letdown this week? I know Wisconsin's 5-2, 3-1 in the Big Ten, but now as fans, we've kind of looked at the schedule and like, okay, we got through Penn State, got through Notre Dame, bring on the team up north. So is that something that, because Ohio State is a lot of these teams' bowl games. They might make a New Year's 6 or something like that, but when Ohio State, especially if Ohio State goes in like they are into Camp Randall, Saturday night, NBC, I checked the weather, the temperature's supposed to be in the low 40s, upper 30s, so, that traditional, Midwest football weather at this time of year. Is this a trap game of sorts for the Buckeyes?
If this was Urban Meyer, the answer is yes. But this is Ryan Day. And so far in Ryan Day's career, he has never had this letdown. Sure, we've had bad statistical games and we've had close games. But never has he had that letdown that ends in a loss. And I think that's the most important thing you have to remember. Line for this game is 14.5 in favor of Ohio State. Over-unders 43.5. Those are kind of big numbers. I haven't put together my article quite yet. I'll get to that one on Thursday. But my early thoughts on that game, and going into that. Wisconsin does as Wisconsin does. It's power football, and as you said, bad weather. This is how football is supposed to be played in the Big Ten. This is what makes the conference special. This is why some people don't like USC and UCLA joining into the fun here, because that's sunshine weather out there. This is cold October football. I was at a high school football game last Friday night, St. Ed's versus Hoban. Great game. And what it was October football. It was freezing cold. It wouldn't stop raining. It was frankly miserable if you were out there in the stands. Luckily for me, I get to be in the press box. But at that game, it was October football. And that is exactly what people from around here love to see. And it's what Ohio State has tried to rebrand as this season. I think what you're seeing out of Ryan Day, it looks a lot more like of a blend between Jim Tressel and Urban Meyer, who each had their own distinctive play callings. Urban Meyer brought the pizzazz, the flash from the SEC. Jim Tressel, hard-nosed football. Defense wins championships. With Ryan Day, slowly but surely, I think what he's trying to build to is a perfect blend between the two to kind of make his own system. And I think so far he's done a good job of pushing that direction. And he hasn't had that letdown. Sure, stats aren't always there, but with this defense, I don't think we have to necessarily worry about the loss coming. But I think come fourth quarter, we will definitely see some fans stressing. For probably myself, I'll be stressing out watching this game, because I do every week when I watch Ohio State football, because you just never know, and I like getting a little too involved with my football, if you haven't been able to tell. But I don't think a letdown is coming. I do think this is going to be close. It's Luke Fickell. He understands Ohio State football. He understands Big Ten football. He turned nothing in Cincinnati into a team that goes to the college football playoff. If you're going to trust any coach to pull Ohio State close, I think these next 2 weeks are crucial. With Luke Fickell and Greg Schiano the next 2 weeks. Those head coaches have both been at Ohio State, were there when we won a title last, and have put together great rosters of their own at this point. And Wisconsin's still in a rebuilding year, but like you said, they're 5-2 at the moment. They're no one to take lightly at this point. This could potentially be, you never know how the Big Ten West or East breaks down this year, could be a preview of a Big Ten championship game. And no matter what, those fans out there in Madison, Wisconsin have not forget the beating Ohio State put on them prior to the national championship game, in which we blanked them and forced their running back to not break his single-season rushing record until their bowl game. I haven't forgotten it either.
Obviously. As Ohio State fans, we don't forget anything that happened, that
good or bad. I mean, that was the legend of Cardale Jones. I don't forget that.
Right.
But, well, I mean, undefeated to this point in the season, is this kind of where you expected the team to be? Like, is there some area that you wish was maybe a little bit better than others, or is there something that's kind of shining more than you expected to this point in the year?
Yeah, corners are shining way more than I expected. Mm-hmm. And Igbinosun, he's been up and down at games, but it seems like the last couple weeks he's figured things out, because I listened to a lot of radio calls early in the year because I was out on the road while Ohio State was playing football, so I had to listen into a lot of games. And luckily we got Paul Keels in the booth, and he is great, and they are great at breaking things down for Ohio State radio. And just about every time early in the season, Igbinosun was getting burned. No one was targeting Denzel Burke. Igbinosun stepped up against Penn State with no Burke. He stepped up the week before. He has looked really good these last couple weeks. I think he stepped up well, and this entire unit around them has looked great. We're getting young guys out there in the folds. So really, I'd have to give a shout out to the secondary for Ohio State. It was the biggest concern coming into the season on the defensive side of the football, and I think the changeups that they have made have really shown in the scoreboard, on the stat book. Everything that this secondary has done has gotten us back to where we wanted Ohio State football to be. So I think that secondary is huge. We're still waiting for this offensive line, and I think everyone in the nation wants that to be better. I don't think that there's a Buckeye fan out there that you go up to them and you go, what do you think of the offensive line? And they go, it's been great. No one's going to say that. Everyone's going to be, yeah, they could be better. But last week, our linemen got up to the second level, blocking linebackers. It's something we did not see against Purdue. So already, week to week, if you see an offensive line that can change week to week, that's great, because they're going to need that for this upcoming slate of games. Wisconsin's going to play physical. Rutgers going to be a little flashy. Michigan State, who knows what that's going to be. Minnesota, that's going to be physical. And then you got Michigan, who is going to throw everything and the kitchen sink at you because they might know what you're calling. But that's a conversation for another day. But no, I mean this offense and defense are going to have to make change-ups every week, and the ability to make the improvements from Purdue to Penn State going into a bigger game. You don't normally see a team able to make adjustments going into a bigger game. Normally, it's after that. To see what they can do. A real testament right now to these coaches and the way that they're changing the program and getting these guys to buy in. And every coach talks about that. Can you get these guys to buy in? And I think right now for Ohio State, everybody is. And to the question of, is this where I thought they would be? Kind of no. Going into the season, I was very skeptical, especially about this quarterback situation. When you look at the history of starting quarterbacks at Ohio State in their first years, it's positive, but there's always something there that it's never pretty when you see first year starters at Ohio State. And I think Kyle McCord has kind of lived up to that at this point, but I honestly didn't expect to see the success that we have had, in big part to our defense. I know in my preseason breakdown, I gave Ohio State an undefeated record. Might be a little biased there. Who knows? I'm a big Ohio State fan, so there potentially could be some bias on why I think they were an undefeated team. But I had question marks. Wisconsin was a preseason top 25. Notre Dame was preseason top 10. You had Penn State in there, who was started 7th. They were 7th last week, so no change-ups there. And then you have Michigan at the end of the season. And I thought we had a lot of these games in between that were going to have me clenching my chest for 4 quarters. And, well, we've seen that a little bit. They played so much better against Western Kentucky, Maryland, and Purdue than I thought they would have, especially after the start to the season with Indiana. I was definitely worried on how they were going to handle these games in between the big ones. And I think so far the way that they have done that, because everybody wants to look at your ranked matchups. What do you do against top 25 teams? And both times it's been one-score games. That's fine to me. Top 25 matchups will be what they are. The only thing that matters in those games is wins. To me, what's most important and what is most telling about a team is how do you play the weeks between. And so far, Maryland, Purdue, and Western Kentucky, they've dominated. The offense clicks. And that's the big thing for me when I look at Ohio State football, the weeks in between. These are the weeks between. You have 4 more weeks coming up here until the big one after Thanksgiving. If they can handle this, then I'm perfectly fine with how this season goes, because at this point, the resume is there. If we handle the next 4 opponents with the way college football is going this season, Big Ten has a very good chance to get 2 teams in the college football playoff, and it's probably going to be Ohio State and Michigan, depending on if the NCAA makes a ruling, or Big Ten at some point in the season regarding the situation over there in Ann Arbor. But I think Ohio State at this point in time has set themselves up well, and without that letdown, which I don't quite see happening with these next couple of games coming up, Ohio State's going to be in the conversation, no doubt.
Well, I mean, I think you really put a button on it there. I think you make it sound like this is an Ohio State team that has all the tools to make another run at the title. Obviously, you mentioned it probably being the best defense we've had since maybe that year, and maybe even prior to that, been even longer since we've had a defense like this. I think that they're probably playing the defense I've seen in a very long time, and I think that's going to be very key in our success, especially coming up with the team up north. Not that far away, but still got to take care of business the next 4 weeks. You can't really take any opponent lightly because like you said, this Ohio State's every team's bowl game, whether it's at Ohio State or Ohio State's on the road. I mean, you're going to get their best shot no matter what, and that's just the reality of being an Ohio State Buckeye and a Buckeye fan.
Yeah, I mean, that is the reality of being just any large program in the country. Georgia has to deal with it. Bama has to deal with it. Clemson, USC. And I think you've seen that especially with USC and not having that defense, what that can do to even the best offenses in the country, not having that support system of a defense. That's what makes Ohio State special this year. I don't want to get anyone's hopes up too high about a national championship. This is a very open season, when it comes. I mean, you look at anyone in the top 10, and realistically, if any of them gets hot at the right moment, the championship is theirs. That does go for Ohio State, but we have to remember the situation that we're in. Ryan Day in the college football playoff has not been all that, which is a legitimate storyline that you always have to think of going into it. And it's still a young quarterback. It's still a young offensive line. There are still problems. This is by no stretch of the imagination the perfect team. Keep reality check. We don't want that to happen in the form of a loss. But this weekend against Wisconsin, in the cold, in the rain, in a physical football game, and what's likely to be a sold-out Camp Randall, people are going to be brought back. Like, hold on, folks. We're not a national champion just yet. There's a long way to go before you even get close to discussing that. This team has growing pains. They got injuries to take care of. There's still a question mark in total confidence with Kyle McCord. Can you get 4 quarters out of him? Like I said earlier, I'm fine with him winning football games. That's all that matters, is the win at the end of the day. But like you alluded to earlier, Derek, you want to see 4 quarters out of a quarterback. And we'll see if they can get to that. All of that comes together to form a national championship caliber team. I don't think they're there yet. Frankly, I don't think anyone in the nation is there yet. And it's going to be the next 5-6 weeks to see who is going to take that step and truly become the nation's top contender. Because I think right now, when you look, Georgia, Michigan, they've had cakewalks of a schedule. Florida State has paid their dues. Ohio State has paid their dues. Washington is right in that conversation with former Indiana quarterback Michael Penix Jr. There is conversation to go around about who is going to be there come January 1st. And that's going to be wide open, I think, until we see how all of this breaks down officially at the end of the season.
Well, Derek, you got anything else to add before we wrap her up?
No, thank you as always, Alec, for your time
For
and
sure.
your excellent Buckeye coverage on Believeland Media.
It's been a pleasure.
It's the first and pretty much only place I go for Buckeyes coverage, so
Yeah.
Keep up the great work. Definitely a big fan.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Believeland Buckeye Breakdown with Alek Koberna, our Ohio State beat reporter. I've been Cameron Palmer with my co-host Derek Dimmitt. Thank you guys so much for watching or listening.
Go Bucks.
OH.